global agenda that determine our national and common interests, especially our interests in Africa and indeed in Nigeria. My name is Tunde Alabi, and thank you for taking the time to join us on the program today. Happy New Year, and glad to see you again on this first episode of the year 2022. Weeks after the federal government and the Federal High Court in Abuja ordered the Nigerian government to declare the activities of a group of bandits as acts of terrorism, the Nigerian authorities, after public pressure, finally made the public official publication in its gazette of two bandits groups operating in the northwestern part of the country as terrorist groups. The proscription also includes similar groups associated with or engaged in the same or similar activities as the proscribed groups called Yambindiga and Yantada. The groups, according to the Nigerian government, are responsible for the killings, abduction, rape, kidnapping for ransom, kidnapping for marriage, mass abduction of school children and other citizens, cattle rustling, sexual slavery, and forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, and other forms of sexual violence, invasion, and killings, as well as wanton destruction of lives and property in Nigeria, especially in the northwest and north-central states of the country. With the official declaration of bandits as terrorists, the Nigerian government appears to have fulfilled a part of the conditions of the United States for the deployment of the Tucano jets to bombard terrorist camps in the country. While this condition is designed to protect vulnerable civilian population, there are, however, allegations against the Nigerian government of human rights abuses, as the controversial Islamic cleric Sheikh Ahmed Gumi recently alleged that the Nigerian military raids innocent communities and has for evidence that some leaders of the bandit groups were killed by the military. The Nigerian military had in the past come under scrutiny by international human rights organizations, Amnesty International, over human rights abuse, and with the deployment of the Tucano jet by the Nigerian Air Force, there are concerns over the safety of civilian population and the possible measures taken to protect them. Although the United States supplies, the supplier of the jets have issued warning to the Nigerian authorities to comply with the international norms as articulated in the United Nations Charter. Past records, however, put their operations under close watch by the United States and other international organizations. The 2020 Global Terrorism Index reports puts Nigeria, Afghanistan, and other countries with the highest record of deaths due to terrorism. And despite the fall in the number of deaths in these countries, terrorism remains a significant and serious problem in many countries. In a report released by the Early Warning Project, Nigeria ranks 8th among 162 countries with projected mass killings in 2022. Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, is said to be a haven for terrorist activities, especially with the expansion of ISIL affiliates into countries like Burkina Faso, Mozambique, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, Niger, Cameroon, and Ethiopia. On today's edition, we shall focus on the worsening armed conflicts in Africa, especially the Sahel region, where a United Nations report indicated that over 2 million people have been displaced and 7,000 killed on the continent in the last decade as a result of terrorist attacks. The armed conflict between government forces and armed groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in the western part of Sahel has devastated much of the region over the past decades. What are governments doing to demobilize terrorist groups beyond official declaration of groups as terrorist organizations? What are the measures put in place to prevent human rights abuse by the military? Why have the activities of terrorists continued to expand despite military intervention? What is the role of international community and regional organizations in the protection of vulnerable communities around the world, especially in Nigeria and the Sahel region? Joining us from London to look at these issues are Jennifer Obaseki. Jennifer is a senior partner at Obaseki Solicitors, London, and our good friend Kingsley Oyemene, also senior partner at KC Law Chamber Solicitors, also in London. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us on the program. I will come back to look at this issue just after this break. Don't go away. The world has become more connected than ever before. Every continent, color, race, language, and religion, even government, move towards common goals. We now live in a global village. Here on this program, we'll bring you global issues to shape our world.
Government can do a lot with tax revenues collected for health and education.
The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned to see whether together we can improve that situation.
The emphasis on education, on vocational training, on the development of entrepreneurship is absolutely critical to democracy.
The Nigerian government, we would ask them to follow up the investigations that we have had, the evidence that we have gathered, and ultimately we made a number of recommendations.
As we travel the world, we explore these issues of international and diplomatic relevance. Indeed, the global agenda that determine our national and common interests. With me, Tunde Alabi, live on AIT. All right, thank you for taking the time to join us. And the program is still Global Matters, coming to you live from our studios here in Abuja, Federal Republic of Nigeria. We're taking a look at terrorism and the fight against it, including human rights. Joining me from London is Jennifer Obaseki. Jennifer is a senior partner at Obaseki Solicitors in London, and she is also the president of Nigerian British Law Forum in London. Jenny, thank you for joining us on the program today. Happy New Year, Jenny.
Happy New Year to you.
All right, quickly, I'd like you to give us your own assessment of terrorism, the fight against terrorism in Africa, probably with specific reference to Nigeria, and how these has impacted on sustaining human rights in this part of the world.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me once again. Sadly, the fight against terrorism is much hindered across the African continent, mainly because there are so many different factions and there's different sponsors with regards to the different groups. Sadly, this has impacted on so many communities, blighting their ability to progress, security. So this piece of legislation, this much awaited piece of legislation, though it's still in its gazette stage within Nigeria, is much needed. As you're aware, the complications of Nigeria's own levels of terrorism, insurgency, don't just stop with bandits. We have issues along with Boko Haram, the renowned established terrorist groups, and so many other factions within the northwestern part of the country. So my answer to you is this legislation is much needed. So much more collaboration and cooperation is needed amongst member countries, because this is a very common problem. It's not just as a result of religion. There's other issues, especially poverty. You have people that sadly have nothing positive around them within their regions, apart from terrorists, bandits, lawlessness. So with regards to human rights, it's impacted so adversely against the progress of human rights within certain countries. In our country, Nigeria specifically, within the specific northwest regions. So ideally, this piece of, this white paper, because I really feel that it does need to have more robust legal teeth. So hopefully there will be better legislation to push this forward so that there can be a much harsher deterrent towards anybody who feels that lawlessness or banditry is a way to overcome economic hardship or to dominate their specific regions.
Tell us, as a human rights activist, a lawyer, barrister, and a solicitor, tell us what is it? Is there kind of a thin line between the fight against terrorism and ensuring that there is no infringement on the rights of the people or the rights of the suspects?
Thank you. The issue is people have a right to voice their opinions, which is, part of freedom of speech. And even within the Nigerian constitution, there is provisions for people to express themselves, even to have a level of civil representation if you have a particular cause. But when it comes down to breaching the law, when it comes down to taking people's lives, these are criminal acts. To sit down and, as we've seen throughout the Northwest, where you've got lawless individuals taking masses of people, leaving people with such levels of insecurity, those are criminal activities. That's not any regional mass group of people trying to demonstrate or hold a cause. That's pure criminal conduct. And there needs to be sanctions. So when you talk about human rights and you talk about a thin line, there is really no thin line. I believe that definitely people know what's wrong is wrong and what's right is right. We all have the right to live in peace, have a freedom of religion, association, have a right to engage in these basic human qualities that anybody should want for themselves. But when you're in a position where, as an individual, you cannot even go to school, you cannot just carry out your day-to-day activities, then the state, the government has to put things into place to make sure that you're protected. So the legislation from the government is needed just to make sure that we are protected and individuals there are able to carry out their basic human rights. So it's not left there to be a thin line. It's what is the obligations of government in this particular situation.
Obligation on government in this particular situation. I am aware, as a president of the British Nigerian Law Forum in London, that you have received petitions and made attempts to intervene in cases of human rights abuses across a couple of cities in Nigeria and other African countries. Tell us, what are some of these biggest issues you are dealing with concerning human rights abuse in Nigeria or in other parts of the West African communities that have impacted negatively on the people?
Well, to be honest with you, the main issue tends to be arbitrary arrests and detentions, where people are held for such long periods of time without any redress. No redress to a court for bail, no redress to even have the actual reasons specified as to why they've been arrested. That is one of the main issues. Most recently, we've seen the issue with regards to the young boy that unfortunately died at the school. Again, looking into having really fair, clear investigations and fair access to justice. So access to justice is really one of the main issues that we have as referrals to our lawyers here in the UK seeking help. During the SARS demonstrations, we also again had the call out for people who had loved ones go missing, and we had to wait for the Lagos State inquiry before there was the admission that there were killings. And I must thank the AIT station for spotlighting that particular incident. And it was at the end of the inquiry that many of the other media outlets were actually vindicated because they were portraying the truth. So we do see that there has to be a better effort towards the protection of human rights, these basic things that many people in the West take for granted, really, and enjoy on a daily basis. We can take for granted that we'll go outside, and if we are arrested, we'll be told the reasons why we're being stopped, detained, and arrested. And we would, if detained for a long period of time, at least be brought before a tribunal or a court to outline and request for bail. And these are all basics. So really, operation of absolutely good and efficient legal process is one of the main things that we realize leads to the breaches of human rights in Nigeria.
The Nigerian military has consistently been accused of excessive use of force against the civilian community, or probably abuse of human rights. And I can imagine one of the conditions given by the United States of America, from where the Nigerian government purchased the Tucano fighter jet, was that it could not be used against the civilian community as an excessive force, except under limited circumstances internally. I assume that caused the federal government to actually declare bandits as terrorists. If the United States is really concerned about abuse of force against the civilian community, that says something about the Nigerian government. In your capacity as member of the international legal community, what advice would you be giving to the Nigerian army and the Nigerian government as they continue to wage this very serious war against terrorists in the country?
You know, the sad thing is, this piece of legislation, when you look at the date of it, 2011, and all countries around the world took steps to robustly ensure that they were taking real firm steps to counter terrorist activities. And this, unfortunately, has taken such a long time to get to this stage. Tabling legislation that is crucial for the protection of your citizens between assemblies and not having things certain and signed off in time is one of the bad things that adversely affects progress and protection within our country. There must be proper legislation and accountability. There must be better training for our armed forces, and especially the military and police, with regards to the power that they hold. They hold the power to give life and take life, and therefore when they're given weapons such as this that should be used to counter terrorist activity and criminality within their countries, it should never be used against citizens. So robust legislation, better training, and no delay. Those are the things that should really be looked at.
Robust legislation.
Our fight towards countering terrorist activity.
Robust legislation and better training for our armed personnel in the country, so that they understand while they are discharging their constitutional responsibilities, they are also able to respect the rights of the citizens as well. Jenny, I need you to stay on the line a little bit more. Let me join Kingsley Oyemenim. Kingsley is a senior partner at KC Law Chambers, also in London. Kingsley, thank you for joining us on the program today. You're welcome to the show. Kingsley, tell us, in your own assessment, what are your views, or what will you consider as the greatest challenge the Nigerian and African government, either the Nigerian government or both the Nigerian government and other governments in Africa, are facing in their fight against terrorists in the country, in their countries? Maybe with specific reference to Nigeria, and also maintaining and keeping
I think if
rights.
I can perhaps, good afternoon, and good afternoon, Jennifer, and thanks for having me on this program. Terrorism, if we can start with Nigeria, for example, we've seen how over the very short period of time, it's almost overwhelming the security services of the country. Almost all states, fall short to say all of them, but almost all states, and it's spread. We have this in Cameroon. We have this in respectively quite a few other African countries. So it's, yes, for a government of the day, it's got to be a matter of concern. And the Nigerian government, obviously, perhaps, although with commendation, has woken up, recently to try and do something about it. I think it was the recent case in the High Court I think it was a judgment that was given by Justice Taiwo recently in the High Court that declared a particular, I think it was two of the groups as terrorist groups. Now, the government obviously have taken steps to publish a gazette of those who they probably would term as bandit group. I think it's a welcome development, but one of the many concerns that perhaps I would want to raise is to make sure that process is not used in a very abusive manner. And I mean, we have presently the Nigerian situation as we know it. We have the Yoruba, a certain group in the Yoruba, certain group in the Yoruba nation who are obviously agitating. You have certain group in the northern section of Nigeria who are agitating, and you have the IPOB members, the IPOB members who obviously are seeking to find their own nation. So whilst we have this development, and I think the government should be careful in being fair as to who and why they declare a particular group as a terrorist group. It is a welcome development, but there are concerns today, and these concerns we can see has played out well before today's date. So in moving forward, there is need for us to advance this with caution. And I think if fairness is applied, then it will be welcomed.
There's a need for the Nigerian people to acknowledge the sacrifice the Nigerian military has made in the fight against terrorism, and also keeping the territorial integrity of Nigeria and the peace of the country. However, as they move to the next stage of the fight against terrorism, now with their being able to apply and deploy it to Kano, having declared some groups as terrorist groups, what advice would you have for the Nigerian military and all those who bear arms in the country, that as they engage in this warfare, there's also the need to protect the civilian population and respect human rights?
Yes. I think it's important to acknowledge the role of the Nigerian military. The Nigerian military is respected all over the world, in the African continent, in the West, where they've been called upon to do their duties. They've done it very diligently, and they've done it very efficiently. Now, if we take that back home to how we as Nigerians perceive them, and how they obviously relate to civilians, that many Nigerians will tell you, well, look, I don't think they are worth respecting. I mean, I growing up as a young man, I've always had the biggest respect for the Nigerian military. My father served in the army, but there has been that crossover. I think in sort of not being able to clarify what their duties are. Their duties is first and foremost to protect the integrity of the nation and invariably its citizens. So there is the need to perhaps have additional regulations and guidance as to how their role has to be discharged. There are numerous instances of abuse by military personnel, and I'm not going to try and tarnish every single one of them with the same brush. They have done us proud on many occasions, but they still have been found wanting today. I believe if you look at the NSAS report that was recently disclosed by the Lagos government, if you look at the report, you would see the numerous number of incidents, not just involving the police officers, but also Nigerian military personnel. So there is need, because I don't believe that the legal system itself has done the bit that it ought to, in terms of taking adequate steps to protect the right of individuals who either have been abused or brutalized by this particular sector. But it's not to say, Tunde, that they have not performed in the past. Yes, they have, but there is need for them to clearly acknowledge that there have to be some level of overhaul.
Thank you so much, Kingsley Oyemenim. He is the senior partner, KC Law Chamber Solicitors, based in London. Thank you for your insight into this discussion today.
Thank you.
And also Jennifer Obaseki is the senior partner at Obaseki Solicitors. Incidentally, the two of them are on the same streets in North London. All right, guys. Thank you for taking the time to join us on the show today. Your contributions very well appreciated, and I wish you a happy New Year. And when you guys come to Nigeria very soon, we'll be happy to have you in our studios here in Abuja. Thank you, and enjoy your week.
Thank you, Cindy.
And happy New Year. Thank you, guys. All right, my sincere appreciation to everyone who has been part of this program, made it a success, the team, my producer and associate producer, and of course, those behind the cameras and in the MC. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your weekend. Please keep safe. There's still COVID out there. Bye.